Hello and welcome. In today's session, we'll learn how to use the try-catch activity. First, we will delve into the use of the try-catch activity. Then we will explain the use case. Next, we will build the RPA flow. And at the end, we will do a quick summary of this tutorial. To begin, we first need to understand the basics of the try-catch activity. Try-catch is an exception handling block in programming. In simple words, the try block tries a scenario that must throw an exception, and catch catches the exception using the appropriate exception class. Based on the exception caught, the RPA flow can then be redirected to a desired outcome. Within the finally block, it executes the flow irrespective of whether an exception was caught or not. To help us understand the basics of this activity, we will take an example of working with Excel. When you run an RPA flow that uses the Excel activities, if Excel applications are open, the activities will not execute and it will return a 500 error. However, we can handle this scenario using the try-catch activity. In our case, any RPA Excel activity will not run if Excel is still open. To test this, we'll start by creating a new RPA flow. Here, we'll provide a name and brief description and click Create. These activities could be anywhere in the RPA flow, but to make things simple, I'll start by dragging and dropping the try-catch activity. Next, I'll look up the read range activity and place it within the try block. For this activity to throw an exception at this point, be sure to uncheck the Continue on Error property in the Properties panel. Any activity will only throw an exception when the Continue on Error box is unchecked. Next, we'll define its properties by specifying the workbook path, which is the path to the Excel spreadsheet. For that, we will create the variable with the default value, worksheet name Sheet 1, and the range, for instance, A1:B2. For the data table, we need to create the variable named DT of type data table. Later on, we will use this variable to validate whether the Excel was read or not. Now, if Excel is running, an exception will be thrown and caught in the catch block. There can be different types of exceptions, and they are caught using the appropriate exception classes. In this case, we will simply use system.exception to catch ours. Along with catching the exception, we can add an activity or a sequence here to handle that exception. Let's add a sequence that contains a message box. The message will display the exception we have encountered and further instructions on how to handle it. Exception.message will display the exception encountered. The following input can be given to the input text property of the message box. Exception.message plus RPA cannot access Excel since it is open. Please close Excel and click on OK to proceed. Here, we ask the user to close Excel before proceeding and then click OK in the message box. And by adding a 10-second delay, this will allow the user to complete these actions. The finally block executes regardless of whether an exception was caught or not. As a final check, we will take advantage of this property to validate whether our Excel was running in the background or not. To do so, we can place an if block inside the finally block and check if DT is nothing. This is a check for whether the variable for read range will give an output is empty or not. In the case that Excel was running, first read range will not work and nothing will be stored inside the variable DT. Therefore, within the if activity, the then block will have another sequence, and under it, we will configure the read range activity similar as before, defining the workbook path, worksheet name, range, and output data table. Next, we will add the message box and provide the following input text, dt.toString, which will read the data stored under the DT variable. If Excel was open at first and then had to be closed, that means it would need to be read again using read range. If Excel was not running, then nothing needs to be done. And as we can see, after closing the Open Excel app and rerunning the RPA flow, We received activity code 200 indicating that the RPA flow executed successfully and returned with no caught errors. And that completes today's tutorial. We presented how to use the try-catch activity via a simple exception use case in which we ran an RPA flow while Excel was still open. We showcased the following activities: try-catch, read range, message box, and delay. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you wish to see more, please visit our dev portal at developer.infor.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest content.